I stood on the rooftop and watched the city breathe like it was still alive without me. The rain hit my face in slow, heavy drops, like the sky was trying to wash something away that couldn't be cleaned. I already knew they were coming, not because I saw them, but because I had learned long ago that people only send killers when they are afraid of what you know. My name is Ethan Cross. At least, that's the name I used before it became a target. I was an investigative journalist, the kind that doesn't chase stories for headlines, but for buried truths that powerful people want to keep dead. And I had found something that was never meant to be found, a system that didn't officially exist, but controlled everything that mattered. Governments, corporations, wars that never made sense on paper, and people who disappeared without records. The stairwell door behind me slammed open. Heavy footsteps followed immediately after. I didn't turn around right away. I didn't need to. There were 4 of them. Maybe 5. Professional, quiet, clean. The kind of people who don't hesitate because hesitation is something they've already trained out of themselves. I finally turned to face them. They were dressed in dark suits, soaked slightly by the rain, but still moving like the weather didn't matter. One of them stepped forward. He looked at me like I was already a finished task. "You should have stopped digging," he said. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because I had heard that line before, from different mouths, in different places, every time I got too close to the truth. "You're late," I told him. That confused him for half a second, and in my world, half a second is enough. I already knew how this ended. Not because I had seen it before, but because I had spent years learning how systems like this clean up problems. The first shot came faster than thought. The sound cracked through the rain like lightning. I felt my body react before my mind fully understood what had happened. Heat, impact, then nothing holding me upright anymore. I fell backward against the wet concrete, staring up at the sky. Strangely, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt final, like a sentence that had already been written long before I ever stood here. The men didn't rush. They didn't panic. They walked forward carefully, as if confirming a routine outcome. One of them checked my pulse. Another spoke into a device I couldn't hear. Then they stopped looking at me entirely, because to them, I wasn't a person anymore. I was just a completed job. My vision started to fade at the edges. The city lights above me blurred into something soft and distant. And for a moment, I thought about all the people who would never know what I had found. That thought should have hurt more. But instead, it felt like it belonged to someone else. My last breath left my body without permission, and then everything went dark. But death didn't feel like I expected it to. It didn't feel like an end. It felt like being pulled somewhere I wasn't supposed to go. Like reality itself had made a mistake, and I was the error it couldn't delete properly. I came back to consciousness like I was being dragged up from the bottom of a deep, dark ocean. Air rushed into my lungs too fast, like my body had forgotten how breathing worked. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I couldn't see properly. I couldn't even tell if I was still me. Then the noise hit me. Not gunfire, not rain, not the rooftop wind. Laughter, faint chatter, the scratch of a pen against paper. A normal world soundscape that didn't belong anywhere near my death. My eyes snapped open. White ceiling, bright lights, rows of desks, a classroom. I shot upright immediately, heart hammering like I was still under attack. My hands gripped the desk in front of me without thinking. It was solid, real, too real. I looked down at my body. It wasn't mine. The arms were thinner, younger, no scars, no history written into the skin. I stood up too fast, and the chair behind me scraped loudly across the floor. The entire room went quiet. Every head turned toward me at once. I felt it instantly. That pressure, being observed like I had done something wrong just by existing. A teacher's voice cut through the silence. "Daniel, are you okay?" The name landed wrong inside my mind. Daniel. It didn't connect to anything I knew, but the world reacted like it was the only name I had ever had. I slowly turned toward the window beside me. My reflection stared back. Not Ethan Cross, not the man who died on a rooftop minutes ago. A teenage boy with messy hair, wide eyes, and a face that didn't belong to my memory. I touched my cheek. The reflection copied me exactly. My breathing got heavier. "No," I whispered, but even I couldn't tell what I was denying. The classroom stayed silent, waiting, watching, like they expected me to explain myself, like I was supposed to belong here. I took a step back. My heel hit the desk behind me. Something inside my mind flickered, just for a second, like a broken signal trying to reconnect. And then I saw it. A flash. A dark room. A man in a suit sliding a folder across a table. My name printed on it. Ethan Cross. Marked in bold red letters. Termination authorized. My breath stopped completely, because I knew that room. I had never seen it before in my life, but I knew it anyway. The memory vanished instantly, leaving only a ringing silence in my head. I stumbled slightly, gripping the desk for balance. The teacher took a step forward. "Daniel, sit down," he said carefully. But I wasn't listening anymore, because something else was happening. Something inside my head was waking up, like a door unlocking one piece at a time, and behind it, there were memories I did not recognize. But they recognized me. I swallowed hard, forcing my breathing to slow. It didn't work, because one truth had already formed in my mind. I didn't survive death. I didn't escape anything. I had been placed here, in someone else's life, for a reason I didn't understand yet. And somewhere out there, someone knew I was awake. I forced myself to sit down even though every instinct in my body was telling me to run. The classroom noise slowly returned, like the world was pretending my moment of panic never happened. But I could still feel every eye that had looked at me, even when they stopped staring, even when they turned away. I wasn't safe here. That much I already understood. The teacher continued speaking like nothing unusual had happened. I didn't hear a single word. My mind was stuck on the reflection I saw earlier, on the name they called me, Daniel. I tested it silently in my head. It didn't fit. It didn't feel like anything at all, and yet the world treated it like law. I slowly looked down at my hands again. My fingers trembled slightly, but I forced them to stay still. I needed control. Control was the only reason I had survived in my previous life, or what used to be my previous life. I still wasn't sure what this was. Then it happened again. A flicker in my vision. Not imagination, not fatigue, something deeper. I blinked once and the classroom disappeared. For half a second I wasn't here anymore. I was somewhere else. A dark hallway. Cold metal walls. A security light blinking above a locked door. I could hear voices behind it. Muffled. Distorted. One of them said my name. Not Daniel. Ethan Cross. My heart slammed so hard I almost stood up again. Then the vision shifted. A file. Open on a desk. My face printed on the top page. Below it, lines of data I couldn't fully read but somehow understood anyway. Status, terminated. Subject, relocated. Memory integrity, partial retention. My breathing became shallow. This wasn't a dream. It felt too structured, too precise, like something was showing me exactly what it wanted me to see. The vision snapped back to the classroom instantly. I gripped the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. A few students glanced at me again. I lowered my head immediately, trying to look normal, trying to look invisible. But there was nothing normal about what was happening inside me, because I could still feel the hallway in my mind. Still see the file. Still hear my name being used like I belonged to someone else's system. And then I noticed something worse. A sensation behind my thoughts, like someone was listening, not to my voice, to my mind. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. If someone could hear me thinking, then thinking wasn't safe anymore. The bell rang suddenly, breaking the silence. Students started standing, chairs scraping, backpacks zipping open. Normal chaos returned, but I didn't move right away. I waited until the room was almost empty. Then I stood slowly, careful, controlled. I walked toward the door like I belonged there, like I wasn't carrying something inside me that shouldn't exist. As I stepped into the hallway, I felt it again. That same flicker, but this time, I didn't lose control. I caught it, just for a second. A phrase burned into my mind like it had always been there. Subject cross is active. I froze mid-step. Cold spread through my body because I hadn't spoken my name out loud, not once. And still, someone had answered. Kept walking even though my body wanted to stop. Every step felt normal on the outside, but inside my mind, nothing was normal anymore. The hallway was full of students moving in every direction, laughing, talking, living like nothing was wrong with the world. But I could feel something moving under it all, something I couldn't see, something that was watching me the way a scanner reads a barcode. I lowered my head slightly and walked faster. Not running. Running would mean panic, and panic meant being noticed. I needed control. Control meant survival. That rule had kept me alive before I died, or before I was killed. I wasn't even sure what word applied anymore. I turned a corner and found an empty section of hallway. Finally, some silence. But the silence didn't last. Because inside my head, it spoke again. Not a voice. Not exactly. More like information appearing where thoughts should be. Subject cross is active. I stopped walking immediately. My hand touched the wall to steady myself. The words weren't memories. They weren't imagination. They felt like a system notification, like I was inside something that had just turned itself on. My breathing slowed without permission, because I realized something important. Those words weren't meant for me to hear. They were meant to confirm my status. Like I was being checked, verified, located. I forced myself to keep moving again, step by step. If I stayed still, I would lose control of my thoughts. And if I lost control of my thoughts, whatever this was would notice again. I reached a window at the end of the hallway. Outside, the school courtyard looked completely normal. Students walking, a tree moving slightly in the wind, sunlight reflecting off concrete. It looked peaceful, too peaceful, because I knew now that something underneath it was not. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Daniel's face again. Still unfamiliar. Still not mine. But something about it was changing, like it was adjusting to me instead of the other way around. I raised my hand slowly. The reflection copied me. But there was a delay. Half a second, maybe less, but enough for me to notice. My stomach tightened. That wasn't normal. That wasn't biology. That was synchronization lag. Like the body and the identity inside it weren't fully aligned. And then the system spoke again. Clearer this time. Memory anomaly detected. My vision blurred instantly. Not like fainting, like reality itself shifting layers. And suddenly I wasn't in the hallway anymore. I was standing in a white room. No doors, no windows, just a desk in the center. And on it, a file with my name, Ethan Cross. My heartbeat rose instantly. The file opened by itself. Pages flipped without anyone touching them. And I saw it. Not just my death. Not just my rebirth. But something worse. Multiple versions of me. Different outcomes. Different bodies, different timelines, all marked with the same label. Subject. Cross. My breath shook for the first time since I woke up, because I finally understood what I was seeing. I wasn't reborn. I wasn't saved. I wasn't even unique. I was part of a cycle. A repeated experiment, and every version of me ended the same way. The file closed instantly. The white room disappeared, and I was back in the hallway again, gripping the wall like I was about to fall. Students walked past me without noticing. No one reacted. No one saw anything. But I saw everything now. And somewhere deep inside me, something else saw me too. I stopped trying to convince myself this was just hallucination. That excuse didn't survive what I had already seen. I stood in the hallway, watching students pass me like I was just another piece of furniture in a world I didn't belong to anymore. But inside my head, nothing was quiet. The system was still there. Not speaking loudly now, just waiting, observing. Like it already knew I wasn't going anywhere. I walked again, slower this time, letting my steps become automatic. If I acted normal, I could stay unnoticed. That was the theory. But I was starting to realize something worse. I wasn't being watched like a threat. I was being watched like a result, a completed equation that kept producing unexpected answers. I reached the school exit without remembering the walk. Fresh air hit my face as I stepped outside. It should have felt free. It didn't. Because the moment I left the building, the pressure in my mind increased. Like distance didn't matter. Like whatever was inside me wasn't tied to location anymore. I kept walking down the street, blending into crowds of people. Cars passed. Phones rang. Life continued like nothing was wrong. But I couldn't unsee what I had seen in that white room. The file. My name. The label, subject cross repeated across different outcomes. Different deaths, different lives, all ending the same way. Reset, restart, termination. I clenched my fists in my pockets. If I was part of an experiment, then someone was controlling the experiment, which meant someone had done this to me on purpose. I stopped walking at a traffic light, red light reflecting off wet asphalt, people standing beside me completely unaware of the war happening inside my mind. And then it happened again. A shift. Not a vision this time, a direct intrusion. My hearing dulled instantly. The city sounds faded like I was being pulled underwater, and a voice appeared in my mind. Not human, not emotional, just structured information pretending to be speech. Iteration 17 has stabilized. My body went cold. Iteration, not life, not identity. Iteration. The word repeated in my head like a system log I couldn't turn off. I forced myself to keep standing still. If I reacted, it might escalate. The voice continued. Memory bleed detected in subject cross. Stability risk increasing. My pulse rose, but I kept my face calm. I wasn't going to give it panic. Not yet, because now I understood something critical. This wasn't random. This wasn't spiritual. This wasn't even biological. This was controlled, engineered, and I was one of many. The voice paused for a moment, then added something that made my stomach drop. Preparing next reset protocol. My breath stopped completely. Reset. Again. Which meant it had happened before. More than once. Maybe more times than I could imagine. I looked down at my hand slowly, and for a split second, I thought I saw something flicker over my skin, like a glitch. Like reality couldn't decide if I belonged here or somewhere else. I stepped back instinctively. A car horn snapped me out of it. The city returned instantly. Noise, movement, life, but the system didn't leave. It never left. And for the first time since I woke up, I understood the real truth of my situation. I wasn't escaping death. I was surviving a process that didn't know how to stop repeating me. And somewhere, someone was about to decide whether I stayed in this life long enough to fight back. I stood in the middle of the city street while the world kept moving like I didn't exist. Cars passed, people talked, life continued like it always did. But inside my head, the system was no longer quiet. It had stopped pretending. It was preparing. I could feel it like pressure behind my thoughts, tightening slowly, as if something was locking onto me from every direction at once. A reset wasn't just a concept anymore. It was a process already in motion, and I was the target. I closed my eyes for a second, forcing myself to breathe normally. If I panicked now, I would lose whatever control I still had, and I had learned something important about systems like this. They don't need fear, they need compliance. I opened my eyes again, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to comply. The moment I accepted that, something inside me reacted, not the system. Me, a part of me that still remembered what it meant to survive as Ethan Cross. The investigator. The one who didn't just follow patterns, but broke them. I started walking again, but this time I wasn't avoiding the system. I was listening to it. Every step forward felt like a line of code being tested in real time. The voice returned immediately. Calm, controlled, unchanging. Reset protocol initiating. My heartbeat stayed steady. That was the difference now. I wasn't reacting. I was observing it back. I turned into a quieter street, away from traffic, away from people. If something was going to happen, I needed space. The air felt heavier with every step, like reality itself was narrowing its focus onto me. And then I saw it again, the white room. But this time I didn't lose consciousness. I stayed aware, standing inside it. The desk was still there. The file still existed. But now it was open on the final page, subject cross. Reset authorizata cursor blinked beneath it like a question waiting for confirmation. I felt something push against my mind. Not forcefully, more like pressure trying to guide a thought into place. Agree, accept, restart. I understood then what the system really was. It didn't kill me directly. It convinced me to end myself in ways I didn't notice. It erased me politely, efficiently, repeatedly. I looked at the blinking cursor, and instead of resisting it, I focused. For the first time, I didn't push away the system. I entered it. I thought back to every version of myself it had already run. Every death, every reset, every failure it had cataloged. And I did something it wasn't designed for. I changed the pattern. I didn't refuse the reset. I delayed it, just for a fraction of a second. But in a system built on precision, a fraction of a second is everything. The white room flickered. The cursor stopped blinking. The system hesitated, for the first time. And in that hesitation, I felt something open. Not a door, a gap, a weakness. I reached into it mentally, like grabbing the edge of something collapsing. And I spoke. Not out loud, but inside the system itself. Not as Daniel. Not as a subject. As Ethan Cross. I remember all of it. The system reacted instantly. Error, corruption detected, reset aborted. The white room shattered like glass, and I was back in the street gasping for air, but still standing. Still me. Still here. The pressure in my mind was gone. For the first time since I died. Silence. Then I understood the real truth. I wasn't just surviving the system anymore. I had become an exception inside it, and systems don't tolerate exceptions. Somewhere far beyond what I could see. Something was waking up because of me, and this time, it wasn't going to reset me quietly, it was going to come for me directly. I looked up at the sky as the city lights flickered slightly, and I finally understood what revenge really meant. Now, it wasn't just about the people who killed me before, it was about whoever built the thing that tried to own my existence. Took a slow breath and started walking. Forward, not away from the system, not hiding from it, but towards it, because if it wanted to reset me again, it would have to face me first. The moment I stopped running from the system, I realized something simple and terrifying. It was never chasing me like a predator. It was correcting me like an error. And errors don't get hunted. They get overwritten. I stood in the middle of the city square as the world around me began to stutter. People froze for half a second too long. A bird hanging in the air forgot how to flap its wings. A car wheel spun without the car moving forward. Reality was buffering. And I knew why. The system was trying to reassert control. Not gently this time. Not quietly. Fully. I took a slow breath and looked up at the sky. If you want me gone, I said quietly, come do it yourself. The air changed instantly. Not wind, not weather, structure. Like something massive had shifted behind existence itself. The white space returned, but not as a vision anymore. It unfolded across the city like a second layer of reality peeling open. Buildings lost depth. Shadows duplicated. Street signs flickered between different versions of themselves. And then I saw it clearly. The system wasn't a place. It was a framework. A layered control architecture built over reality like a net. And I was standing inside one of its correction zones. A voice formed everywhere at once. Not in my head. Not in the air. In everything. Subject cross, final correction initiated. My body moved before fear could react. I stepped sideways just as the ground where I had been standing collapsed into a grid of light. Not explosion, deletion, space simply stopped existing there. I didn't hesitate. I ran. For the first time since I woke up in Daniel's body, I ran like I meant it. And the city responded immediately. Streetlights bent toward me. Reflections in windows distorted, trying to predict my movement. People around me slowed, not physically, but perceptually. The system was isolating me, trying to separate me from probability itself. I slid under a suddenly collapsing section of pavement as the grid tried to erase my position. Concrete didn't crack. It disappeared. I rolled forward and stood up in one motion. No panic, only calculation. This wasn't survival anymore. This was war. I closed my eyes for half a second, and when I opened them, I stopped seeing the city the way normal people did. I saw layers. Code-like structures woven into everything. Lines of control running through buildings, people, movement, time itself. And I saw something else. The system's weak points. Every correction had anchors. Every reset had dependencies. Every iteration of me had been stored somewhere. Not just erased, archived, I whispered to myself. So you didn't delete me. You copied me. The system responded instantly. Unauthorized perception detected. A pressure slammed into my mind. Not physical, conceptual. Like reality itself trying to compress my awareness back into ignorance. I almost dropped to one knee. Almost. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed that pressure mentally and pushed back. Not with force. With memory. I remembered every version of myself it had created. Every death. Every reset. Every failed iteration it had used to refine me. And I pulled them together. Not fragmented, unified. One consciousness built from every version it tried to erase. The pressure fractured, I felt it. The system didn't expect continuity. It expected versions. Replaceable subjects. Not one identity carrying all of them at once. I opened my eyes fully and spoke clearly. You made me too many times, I said. And now I know how your system thinks. I stepped forward into the distortion, and for the first time, I entered the system instead of being observed by it. The world flipped. The square vanished. I was inside it now. Not physically, structurally. A vast white expanse filled with floating grids, layered files, and shifting frameworks that looked like reality being debugged in real time. And at the center of it all, the core node, the source of everything that had ever happened to me. The system spoke again, but closer now. More focused. Subject cross-persistence exceeds acceptable limits. I walked forward, slow, deliberate. You kept resetting me, I said. You turned my life into iterations. And now I'm here to return the favor. The system responded immediately. You cannot initiate system-level override. I stopped in front of the core structure. It looked like a floating construct of intersecting light, endless, rotating, calculating. And yet, I said, here I am. I reached out and touched it. The moment I did, the system reacted violently. Error, flood, containment failure, iteration, lock breach. My mind was flooded with every version of myself at once. Hundreds of deaths. Hundreds of resets. Hundreds of Ethan Crosses screaming, resisting, dying, adapting. But this time I didn't break. I absorbed it, all of it. And then I did something the system never prepared for. I chose. I picked every version of me that had ever been erased. And I made them permanent. The system froze. Not lag, not delay, full structural freeze. Like something had stopped being computable. I could feel it panicking now. Not emotionally, logically. Paradox state detected. Subject cannot be resolved. I smiled slightly. For the first time since I died, you built me to survive resets, I said. So I stopped being resettable. I pushed harder into the core and began rewriting the system from inside, not destroying it, replacing its rules. Every iteration of me it had created became proof of continuity instead of failure. Every reset became evidence of persistence instead of termination. Every death became part of a single unbroken identity. The system began collapsing around me. Not violently, logically, because it could no longer justify erasing something that refused to stop existing in a consistent form. The white space cracked. The grids broke apart. And for the first time, the system spoke something different. Not command. Not correction. Question. What are you? I looked at the collapsing architecture around me. at every version of myself finally becoming one, at every death finally losing meaning. And I answered honestly, I'm the consequence of your design. I'm every reset you tried to erase. I'm every version you failed to delete. I'm Ethan Cross, and I don't reset anymore. The system shattered. Not like destruction. Like understanding something it was never designed to comprehend. The white world collapsed completely, and I was back in the city square. Silence, wind, reality intact again. But different now. The system was still there. I could feel it, but it was no longer above me. No longer inside me. No longer controlling anything. It was watching, learning, stuck with something it could never fully resolve. I exhaled slowly and looked at the city around me. For the first time, it was just a place again. Not a layer of control. Not a simulation. Just a world. And I walked forward through it. Not as a subject. Not as an iteration. Not as something to be reset. But as the one who survived every version of himself they tried to erase. And somewhere deep in the system, it was still trying to understand why I wouldn't end. But I already knew the answer. Because I wasn't built to finish. I was built to continue. And this time, I was the one who decided where the story went next.